If you're the smartest person in the room, you, my friend, are in trouble. Now, listen, I understand being the smartest person in the room strokes your ego a little bit, right? It feels kind of good. We're not talking about your ego today, okay? I am not here to boost your ego. That is not the goal of this episode. The goal today is to help you reach your full potential and be the best version of you that you can possibly be. And the funny thing is, it's not always just about our individual behavior or our individual thoughts or what we choose to do day in and day out. The people you surround yourself with have a bigger impact on this than you may think. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of us don't give a lot of thought to. We just have people in our general vicinity. We've got friends, we've got family, we've got coworkers, we've got all of these people that we hang out with day to day. And we don't give a lot of thought to what kind of impact they're having on our actual behavior. Because even if because you may think you're impervious to it, right? You may think that these people you surround yourself with are just people and they don't have any impact on how you show up, right? You have your own things, you have your own goals, you have your own motivations and drives and ability to show up in the way that you want. But you're not impervious to it. You're actually not. So I want you to shift the goal. I want you to intentionally seek out to be the dumbest person in the room. And I don't mean pretending to be dumb. I don't mean watering yourself down in order to make that the case. I mean, seek out people who are above you in some sort of way. Seek out people who are somewhere that you want to be. And I'm going to dive into exactly why you want to do that. Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. I am talking today about the people that you surround yourself with, and like I said in the beginning, how if you are the smartest person in the room, if you find yourself constantly being the smartest person in the room and the one who is the most successful and doing the most things, you're actually probably setting yourself up for failure in some sort of way. And the reason for this is because we gauge our success. We gauge our goals. We gauge where we stand in life relative to the people around us. And so the people you surround yourself with create that benchmark for you. And if you are constantly the smartest person in the room, if you're constantly the most successful person in the room, you are at the top of that benchmark. There's nowhere to go. There's no push for you to do more. There's no prompt for you to be better. And there's no clear direction for you to take in order for you to improve. And because you feel like there's nowhere to go or there's no need to go anywhere, that kind of anxiety or the drive to push you to do something more is never really there. And so you just kind of sit up on your high tower feeling, I've done all the things, I'm good, I'm accomplished, I'm king of the hill, and my shit doesn't smell because I'm better than everybody in my general surroundings. And it's really going to limit you more than you think. It is going to stunt the growth that you could potentially have because you're just not going to seek it out. This is something that I want you to start reconsidering because I think it plays a much larger role in your ability to succeed at anything than you may think. It's going to have a much larger impact on what you accomplish in your lifetime, and that is the people you surround yourself with. And I want you to continuously aim to be at the bottom of that totem pole, to be at the bottom of that benchmark that you've set, because then there is a constant runway for growth. And not only that, but there is examples of people who are ahead of you on that benchmark that can give you a blueprint for what steps you can take for where you can go next in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And This can apply to, general intelligence and success and whatever, but you can also make this a little bit more specific. So that if there are certain areas of life that you want to be better at, if there are certain things that you want to be better at, make it your goal to surround yourself with people who are good at that thing. So let's say you want to get better at public speaking, or putting yourself out there on social media, or setting boundaries, or just, speaking your truth and saying how you feel out loud, instead of being one of those people who bottles everything up and puts everyone else's feelings ahead of their own. If you are wanting to shift that about yourself, seek out other people who do that easily. Seek out people who do that on a regular basis and spend more time with them, because it is going to normalize the behavior that you are trying to take on, and it's going to make it easier for you to adopt that behavior in your own life. Because A, it feels more normal, and B, you have constant examples of what exactly you need to do in order to accomplish those things. And this can go for your goals as well. If you have a certain goal that you are just starting out with, or you're looking to make better progress with, you are better to surround yourself with people who are already finding success in that medium or milieu, or whatever the fuck it is that you're working on. Whatever you're wanting to do, people who are already finding success in that area, they're doing the thing, that have figured it out, that are a few steps ahead of you. Because like I said, it gives you the proof that it's doable, and it gives you a bit of a roadmap for steps that you can take in order to get to a similar place to where that person is. And it helps shape belief in yourself that it is something you can do. Your motivation is largely shaped by the people around you. And all of these things are supported by research. Leon Festinger's social comparison theory is a really good one, which says that we naturally evaluate our own abilities and status by comparing ourselves to the people around us. We are always trying to find our place in the world relative to the people in our general vicinity. And we often engage in what's called upward comparison, and comparing ourselves to someone who's a little bit above us. And this could be a really helpful thing or a really detrimental thing, depending how you look at it. And so this is kind of the one caveat that I want to include in this entire discussion about surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you or ahead of you in certain areas, is your mindset going into it. Because there are two different ways that you can look at the people ahead of you as it relates to social comparison. You can see them as a source of information and motivation, or you can see them as proof that you are not good enough, or proof that you don't stack up, and an excuse to beat yourself down and not pursue the thing that you're trying to pursue, because, if you're not at the place that this other person is at, then you're not capable of doing it. And that can be a really detrimental mindset to have, and that will be the mindset that kind of prompts you to quit. And so this is the reframe that I want you to make sure that you're going into this with. Look to the people who are ahead of you, but look to them for knowledge, and look to them for motivation, and look to them as evidence that what you're trying to do can be accomplished. The people who are ahead of you in any given field and who are doing the things that you want to do, they're not special, right? They're not some magical person who was born into the role and just had all these things handed to them. They were just willing to do the work, and they have just had maybe more time. They've maybe figured out a few more things than you have, but that in no way negates your ability to do the exact same thing. In fact, it's probably a little bit easier because now you have this person to look up to. This kind of, misconception that because there's people ahead of you is proof that you're not able to stack up is actually something called the frog pond effect. And this is something that typically happens if there is one individual in a very high achieving group who is not doing as well and sees themselves as worse off because of it, and instead of motivating them to be better, it crushes their self-esteem and kind of stops the momentum of what they're doing. And so I do not want you to get sucked into this frog pond effect, okay? You are capable of doing the things that you want to do, but your mindset going into it is going to make or break it the same way that the people you surround yourself with is going to make or break it. And something you can do to help avoid this kind of frog pond effect of beating yourself down instead of seeing these other people as a source of motivation and education is to look to surround yourself with people who are not extremely ahead of you in the areas that you're trying to pursue, but people who are just marginally ahead of you. So what can this look like? Let's say, for example, you are looking to get into working out and you're looking to get into better shape. Surrounding yourself with people who have maybe been at it for a few months, maybe a year or two. They're still early on in their journey as well, but they're a little bit further ahead than you. They've figured out a little bit more than you have. This would probably be a better position to put yourself in than comparing yourself to someone who has been at it for decades and is eons away from what you're currently able to achieve. The reason for this is because when you surround yourself with people who are just marginally ahead of you, you're not looking 20 steps into the future. Instead, what you're seeing is a blueprint of how to get to the next step. It's just 1 or 2 steps away from where you currently are, and it feels more approachable. It feels more attainable for you to eventually be in the shoes of those people. And so it's easier to look at those people and feel motivated and encouraged to get to where they are than to beat yourself up and say that you're never going to get there, because it feels more attainable, right? It doesn't feel so far away and impossible for you to achieve. And I think it's helpful from an advice standpoint too, because I think sometimes what happens is when people are progressing through a trajectory of anything, you, without meaning to, tend to kind of lose touch with what it's like to be in those beginning stages when you're no longer in them. And it can be difficult to convey or communicate the kind of advice that's really going to be helpful for someone who's in a much different position than you. Whereas someone who's only a few steps ahead of you in a certain area is probably going to be really good at giving you advice because they're giving advice to a version of themselves that existed not that long ago. They're giving advice to essentially a version of them that they can very closely relate to. They're still close enough to it that they understand what it's like to be in that mindset. They understand the obstacles. They understand the day-to-day thought processes a little bit more. And so it's easier, right? It's easier to get helpful advice from a person in that position. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that this kind of upwards comparison and upwards growth by surrounding yourself with people who are ahead of you can also work in reverse. And so you surrounding yourself with people who are ahead of you in any given way can prompt you to grow and prompt you to, unlock new levels of potential that you hadn't previously done. But the reverse is also true. If you surround yourself with people who are below you quite a bit, or people who don't have the same kind of ambition and drive and goals as you do, they can drag you down with them. And so not only will you not progress forward, it can actually pull you back, because for the same kind of thing, the behavior, the ambition, the goals, the self-talk, the self-esteem, all of these things of the people around you, all of these things that the people around you exhibit, that is what gets normalized in your brain. That is what becomes the normal way of operating day to day. And so if you, let's say, for example, are in a group of people who always talk to themselves in a self-deprecating way, or they always talk themselves down from pursuing goals, and they don't ever go after the things they want to do, and they make up excuses after excuses as to why they can't do it, well, that becomes the norm. That becomes the normal default narrative that you all operate on, yourself included. And without even realizing it, when it comes time for you to go after a goal or try something new in life, you're going to operate on the same narrative as the other people in that group, and you're probably going to pull yourself back from doing it. It's like that common phrase that I'm probably going to butcher in some sort of way, but you are like the culmination of the 5 people you surround yourself with. You are. You really, really are. Like, as much as you can consciously make an effort to do things on your own terms and be your own person, there are elements of you that are going to come from the people in your surroundings, and there are elements of your behavior that are going to be influenced by the people in your surroundings. There was a research study published in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization, looked at the incidence of rule breaking in groups when there were certain people who chose to break the rules. Did it influence other people in the group to break the rules more often? And so what they did is they had participants follow a series of instructions. In this case, they had to go through a maze, and they were instructed to take certain paths on the maze. They were given certain rules for how they had to do this experiment. And what they found was when one participant chose to break the rules in this experiment or take paths that were not the paths they were supposed to take in the maze, more people were likely to follow and break the rules in this experiment. And the participants in this experiment were split up into groups. And what they found was that someone breaking the rules had this kind of spreading effect to the other participants to prompt them to also break the rules in higher percentages, whether or not these people were in the same group as the person who originally broke the rules. So even though the person who broke the rule initially may not have been in your group, it still had this carryover effect and prompted you to break the rules. And so you see how these things, they kind of leach into the behavior of other people, even without other people meaning to, without that being their intention. And there's other studies to support this as well. I don't have the exact numbers, but I guess anecdotally, I've heard about other research studies that covered if there are students in a classroom sitting beside someone who's being really disruptive and breaking a bunch of rules in the classroom, the student sitting next to them is more likely to break the rules and more likely to get in trouble for those things just because they're in proximity to someone who is doing it. Similarly to this, there was also another research paper published by Gino Kim and Jason Fletcher in the National Library of Medicine that looked at the influence of classmates' adolescent criminal behavior on their other classmates, on students in the United States. And what they found was that for each 5% increase in criminal activity from classmates, an individual's own risk of criminal activity went up by 3%. So essentially what that means is if you are in a classroom of people and you had no intention of committing criminal activity to begin with, you were not someone who is committing crimes, you're not breaking the law, for every 5% increase in criminal activity from the other people in your classroom, your own risk of committing a crime goes up by 3%. Just because the people in your general vicinity are doing that behavior. It becomes more normalized, it becomes part of your view of the world, and becomes a lot more likely that you are going to adopt that behavior. So let that be a reminder that this works both ways. This can be really beneficial or it can be really detrimental. And so that, I hope, is kind of the prompt for you to think about who you surround yourself with on a regular basis and what kind of influence they're having on you, positive or negative. And this is one of those things that is often overlooked when people are trying to improve themselves or improve their lives or go after new things. They often don't look to their peer group. They often don't look to improve the people that they spend their time with on a regular basis, because you don't think initially that it's going to have that big of an impact. But it really does. It really does, and it's going to have a much more profound impact than you think on your likelihood of, ability of, and potential to achieve your goals. So if you look around and you find that you're the smartest person in the room and you are at the top of the benchmark compared to everybody that you spend your time with, let that be your prompt to start seeking out people who are above you, people who are going to help motivate you, people who are going to help educate you, people who are going to help you realize your full potential. The people you surround yourself with matter. And all this to say, if you are surrounded with people that you feel are dragging you down in some sort of way, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to go and cut a bunch of people off and, block all these people out of your life. That's not necessarily the move. Instead, what I want you to do is just approach your social interactions with intention, right? Maybe it just means spending a little bit less time with the people who are dragging you down in some sort of way and prioritizing the relationships that are building you up. It's all about intention. Okay? That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you like the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps this show reach even more incredible people just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.